Hi everyone, I'm Christine and welcome back to my sewing studio. Today we're going to be doing a sew with me on pattern See Sew number B5741. This is a really cute purse and it's got two pockets on the front, two pockets on the back, and then one big pocket on either side as well. You can use it as a beach bag, picnic bag, diaper bag, or just a regular purse. I've actually made probably 15 of them, and I still have a couple on my Etsy page for sale. This one I will be using this blue and white check fabric. I will also be making another one as we go along in this red, blue and white check fabric. I do recommend using an outdoor fabric. It's just a little bit stiffer. You will be putting interfacing on it on a couple of the pieces, but the outdoor fabric is just a little bit thicker and it just tends to stand up a little bit better. Now with this pattern, you can choose to use a different fabric for the lining. Now, if you do choose that, I do also recommend using an indoor or an outdoor fabric for the lining as well. I have made a couple where the inside is a different color pattern and it looks really cute. On these, I will be using the same fabric though for the whole purse. Now, if you are using a lining, you will be cutting out pieces 6, 8, and 10 in the lining. And then the main fabric, you'll be cutting pieces 1 through 7 and 9. So piece number 6 is used twice. If you're using the same fabric throughout, cut pieces 1 through 10 out of that one fabric, which I'm using is this, and make sure you cut piece number 6 2 times. The interfacing is for pieces number 2, 5, and 6. So go ahead and cut all of those pieces out. The other things you'll be needing for this project are some pins to pin down the patterns to the fabric, pin the pieces together. You'll also need some good scissors and thread. Now, the only notions this calls for is actually a piece of cardboard, and that basically is what is put in the bottom of the purse to make it stand upright. Now, I have found cardboard does not seem to work very well, so I found this mesh product from Joann's, and it is actually called plastic canvas mesh. Here's the tag that it goes with. It's just a mesh piece. It's easy to cut and it's easy to sew into your fabric. So that's what I use for the bottom of my purse. Step number 1 is to pin the interfacing to pieces 2, 5, and 6. You'll do it to both pieces of number 2, which is the front and back part of your purse. You will have 2 pieces of number 5, which is the side of your purse, and then 1 of the number 6s. Since you do have 2 pieces of number 6, just 1 piece gets the interfacing. So go ahead and put your interfacing on your fabric. Now, if it doesn't iron on like mine does, go ahead and just baste along the edges so you've got it held on tightly. Step number 2 has to do with the pocket, which is piece number 1. Now this pocket looks huge and it goes along the front and the back of the purse, but you will be pleating it in 3 different locations and it'll make it shrink in size and fit your purse. Your first step is to fold down along the top edge 1/4 inch. Now on the pattern piece, there is a fold line that you could draw in here, but I'm just going to go ahead and use my little tool here to fold down 1/4 inch. Then you're going to iron it down and then sew right along the folded edge. So one thing I have found since I've used this pattern many times, my pattern pieces have, you know when you cut out your pattern piece on your fabric, you tend to cut a little bit into the pattern piece. So I'm looking at my piece number 1 and you can see here, I mean, this is a checkerboard, and so you can usually get pretty straight, and I obviously have not gotten it completely straight. So what I'm going to do is make sure this top piece of the check pattern is the same thickness on either end, as well as this pattern, or this piece, you can see up here, got that right there. So what I'm saying is these are rectangular pieces. So if your piece that you've cut out does not look exactly rectangular, go ahead and fix it. So I have taken my pockets, piece number 1, both of them. I did straighten them out along the sides and along the top and bottom of both pieces. Now, if they end up being a little different in size after doing that, it is not a big deal because they are on 2 opposite sides of your purse. So don't worry about it. I've taken the top edge, folded it over by 1/4 of an inch, pressed it and sewn along the top there on both pockets. Now you're going to take your pocket, and I'm going to show you off the pattern piece. You can see in the middle there are 2 lines and a dotted line. You've got a big circle and 2 little circles. What you're going to end up doing is folding these in like this. So the little circle will match up to the big circle. The extra piece of fabric is going to go towards the center of each pocket. That makes sense. Okay, I've done it on my pattern piece. I have taken the little circle, folded it in towards the big circle, and the extra piece of fabric, you can see here, folds towards the center of each side. I'm going to go ahead and do that on my fabric so you can see it. Also on the ends here, you'll do the same thing, but the extra piece of fabric folds towards the edge of your pocket. So this next step with the pocket piece number 1 does get a little confusing, so I went ahead and did it so you can see it. Basically what you do, you're taking the big dot with the small dot, folding the pieces over, and as you can see, the leftover piece, the leftover part of the fabric goes towards the inside of the pocket. And then in the center, I've taken the big dots, I've taken the 2 small dots, folded them into the center to the big dot. You can see here, there's the extra pieces of fabric folded into the center of the pocket. So you can kind of see the top of that. One thing I've noticed doing this before, make sure you have enough fabric on the ends here. So when you sew the pieces all together, you're not catching the fold of the pocket. And I'll show you what I mean later. I also recommend putting the pocket on your piece number 2. This is what it's going to look like. We're going to sew this in a couple of steps from now onto piece number 2. So you want to make sure that the pocket fits. So I have gone and pinned it on the edges, and then I make sure that the center isn't too folded in so that the pocket is too small. You want to make sure the pocket fits piece number 2 perfectly. So what I had done was I did the edges first. I folded in the edges, then I pinned it onto piece number 2, and then I did the center fold so that I can make sure it fits perfectly. Now you're going to take your piece number 1 and baste along the bottom edge where you've got your folds. So go ahead and do that on both pockets. I have gone ahead and basted the bottoms of my pleats. Now basting is basically you take your stitch length and make it the longest it'll go. And so that way it's easy to pull out. So that's what basting is. Now the instructions actually say to baste all the way down each of the pleats. So 4 rows of basting. I used to do that, but I really think this will actually work out fine where I'm just basting along the bottoms, and then you're going to pin your pockets to each of the number 2s again, and this time you're going to baste along the edge, the side, bottom, and the other side. Now when you are doing the side, make sure you don't baste the pocket, the fold over. Make sure you just baste the bottom of the pocket, the flat part that has not been folded over. So go ahead and do that on both of your pockets. Okay, I have sewn my pockets onto piece number 2, and it's of course right side to the wrong side of the pocket. Just a tip, make sure that the top of the pocket is the part that you folded over in one of the first steps. I have done that before where I've sewn the pocket upside down. Since we did not baste it along the creases, we don't have to take out the basting stitch. Now, the next step sounds kind of confusing, but basically what you do is you're going to take your center pocket and you're going to do a stitch right down the center. Make sure you move out your overlap pieces. Stitch the center of the pocket down so it stays down, but you are still able to open the pocket up like that. So go ahead and stitch just one stitch right down the center of both pockets. So after you have sewn the center of your pockets down, so I don't know if you could see that, my white thread right there, I've sewn it down, so now I have 2 separate pockets on both parts of number 2. Now we're going to take our loop, which is piece number 3, which is the thin, long piece like this. There is a line down the center. Basically what we're going to do is fold the ends towards each end towards the center line. What I did was I folded my fabric in half and creased it as much as I could. Since this is an outdoor fabric, it does tend to crease pretty well. I folded it in half, then I folded each end towards the center, just like this. So each end is folded down towards the center. I ironed the edges, and then what you're going to do is fold it in half, like this. And then, just like what I did on this one, I folded it in half, and then you sew along the very top edge. On the ends, on either end, you're going to fold this in a little bit there, and then fold it over. So you will not have a rough edge on the end. Now, as you can see, there's little pieces that always stick out. What I did, I clipped the corner edge right here, but it still doesn't help because you fold it in and fold it over like that and it will still stick out. So I just clipped it after I sewed it. It really doesn't show up on your purse because when it's done, so right here I clipped, there was some part sticking out. I just clipped it right there. And the same thing happened on this end. So I just clipped it a little bit right there and it will look totally fine on your purse. So go ahead and do that on both pieces of number 3. After you have gone and sewn both of your loops together, you are now going to place it onto piece number 2. So the pattern pieces do show on there where to place your loops. I'm not sure if you can see very well because it's blue on blue, but you are going to place it above the 2 pockets. I basically measured 2 inches from the pocket top to where my band is or my loop is, and then make sure they're centered, or it is centered along piece number 2, and then you're going to sew on the 2 ends here, and you are also going to sew right down the center. So you've got 2 loops here, which means when you stick something tall into your pocket, it holds it up. So that's what the loops are for. So go ahead and do that on both pockets. I wanted to show you on this side, you can actually see my loop number 3 a lot easier because it's white on blue. So you can see I went up 2 inches from the pockets. Now, also make sure at the ends here, you do keep it straight. There have been many times where I will sew the ends of loop number 3 and they're just kind of up a little bit or down, and it looks really bad. So make sure your 3 is completely straight across. Sew a little bit in the center so you've got 2 separate loops. Now that was step number 8, and at the bottom of step number 8 it says to do the same thing to pocket number 4 as you did to pocket number 1. Now that means to take the top edge of pocket number 4 and fold it over 1/4 inch, iron it down, and then sew along the edge there. Pocket number 4 is also a rectangle, so make sure it is a rectangle. I had to trim parts of the top and the bottom here to make sure it is straight across, just because again, my pattern pieces have been used so much that I've trimmed off piece of the pattern. So go ahead and make sure it's all rectangle, and then do the top edge of both pockets number 4. I have gone ahead and sewn the top of pocket number 4, and you are now going to take piece number 5, which has the interfacing on it, pin pocket number 4 to piece number 5. Make sure the bottoms and the sides all line up. Also, pocket number 5 is also a rectangle, so make sure it looks like a rectangle. I've done both pockets. I did make sure that they were the same size because your purse will kind of depend on that. And go ahead and baste along the sides, bottom, and edge, keeping the top part open. Okay, I have sewn both pockets to piece number 5. I've got both of them here. Just thread everywhere, but you know, that's what happens. Okay, I'm going to call it quits for tonight, and I will see you tomorrow to finish up the purse. Hi everyone, I am back for day 2 of the purse or tote. This next step, so we've gotten all of the pockets sewn on, both the piece number 2, which is the front and the back of the purse, along with piece number 5 and 4, which are the sides of the purse. So now we're going to put all those pieces together. So step number 10 says to sew piece number 5 to piece number 2. Now on the pattern pieces, you see they've got these big dots here on the top and then small dots on the bottom. When we sew these pieces together, we want to stay within those 2 dots. I have done it before where I've accidentally sewn all the way through and it does end up screwing it up. So make sure you stay within those dots. So I've put piece number 5 up against number 2, right sides together, and you're going to sew down either side and the bottom. Now what I do to remind myself to stay within those dots, I stick a little pin right at the bottom and the top. It's about 1/2 inch from the bottom, and then it is about 1/2 inch from the top of piece number 5, the side piece. Then I'm going to open it up before I sew it on, just to make sure it's looking okay. Make sure when you pin the side of your number 2, I pull out my pocket here. So this is where it's, you know, it's folded over a little bit. Make sure you pull that out so you don't stitch that part of the pocket. If you do, I don't think it's a big deal. It's just that your pocket won't be able to poof out as much as if you keep this side part free. So go ahead and do that. You stitch down all the sides, get them all together, and we'll have a purse. Okay, I have sewn all of my sides together, so I have one big purse. Whenever you're doing this, again, just always make sure, and I know you probably think, oh no, I won't forget. When you pin it, open it up, always make sure it's right side to right side. Now we are going to put the bottom on. And the bottom is piece number 6. And make sure you use the one with the interfacing on it. So all interfacing is facing out. You're just going to pin it along the bottom. And again, when we sew it, we are going to sew from the big dots all the way around. So you are basically going a ½ inch from either end of the bottom. So there you go. There's my bottom pinned on. Now I'm going to sew it all around, making sure I stop a ½ inch from every end. Okay, I have sewn my bottom on to my bag. Now, before we turn it right side out, I would recommend just going through, making sure you've got all your corners sewn correctly, that there's no little openings. It is a difficult thing to do. When you're sewing each side, please make sure you pull out the bottom, so you don't want to get a double, you don't want to accidentally sew another part of your purse when you're just supposed to be sewing 2 pieces. Just make sure everything is flat. That is the hardest part about this bottom. And the corners, I know you hit until you go into the large dot, and it's almost like that's as far as you can go anyway when you're sewing the corners. So you'll also see this fabric frays so much. I don't know if you can see all my little strings everywhere, but that's okay because we will be doing a lining, so all of that will be hidden. Now, after you've done that, you're going to turn your purse right side out and hope that it all looks right, because sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so make sure your corners all look good, because this is where you'll want to fix them if they don't. So I've got it right side out. You can see my pockets are all able to still poof out a little bit on the side. I didn't grab any of the pocket when I was sewing the side seams. Right there, right there. My corners all look good. They're all sewn completely together. If there is an opening, this is where you will need to make sure you flip it back around and sew those corners, maybe by hand. A lot of times that helps to do the corners just by hand if it's not working out on your machine. Because when we get the lining in, you're not gonna be able to do anything. So one thing on my purse, I have a little bunch up right here. You can see this right here. I think I'm going to try and fix it. It's just because this fabric this piece number 6 was probably just a little bit bigger than it was supposed to be. So what I'm gonna do is turn it back inside out, pull those seams, and just fix that little bunch right there. Oh yeah, you can see this is where it is. You see that? This is all confusing. It gets all confusing. You can see that right there. I basically didn't flatten it out right there. So I'm going to have to pull that seam and resew it. But at least I caught it now. Okay, I finished. I pulled the seam, resewed it, so now my bottom looks good. Now you're going to go to the lining.